Good morning. Before I begin talking about the different arms of the Presbyterian Church, I want to remind you of our topic. Systemic poverty, as defined by the Matthew 25 initiative, says systemic poverty is the economic exploitation of people who are poor through laws, policies, practices, and systems that perpetuate their impoverished status. This may take the form of supporting policies that suppress wages, prevent labor unions, maintain racial injustice, suppress the right to vote, prevent the adoption of paid family leave, which kind of hit home in New Mexico this last legislative session, and suppressing universal health care, allow the dismantling of environmental protections, and so on. As you can see, this is more than just an economic issue of money and who doesn't have it. Today, I'm going to talk to you about 5 different ministries of the National Presbyterian Church as they relate to the study of poverty. The Hunger Program, Self-Development of People, Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, Presbyterian Mission Agency, and the Office of Public Witness. I hope that some of this information will be new to you as it was to me, especially if you're not a cradle Presbyterian and you haven't heard about this all your life. We've had the opportunity in the past, when Ghost Ranch Santa Fe existed, to have many international mission co-workers attend our church or speak in our church. And some of them, such as Ann and Dick Rowe, still are members of our church. Reverend Bob Barnes and his wife Kathy worked as volunteers for many years with Presbyterian Disaster Assistance. Karen Finney, the previous Mission and Social Justice Chair, was on the National Board of Self-Development of People. And Jane Hanna, who attended our church for many years but now lives in California, was on the cutting edge of the development of the Hunger Program in the 80s. So you can see, even though the National Church in Louisville is far away geographically, its programs have touched us here in First Presbyterian in a variety of ways. First, I'd like to talk about self-development of people. Self-development of people is a program of the National Church that came into being 50 years ago that engages in partnerships with groups of economically poor and oppressed people all over the world who want to change their lives and their communities. Within the last 10 years, 2 grants that I know of have gone to New Mexico groups. The Women's Global Pathways in Albuquerque received a grant to provide training and a development center for immigrant and refugee women to become economically empowered through sewing projects that they sold. And Chainbreaker Collective is right here in Santa Fe on 5th Street. Karen Finney and I were able to review it for a grant that they received about 10 years ago. They were originally known as a nonprofit where people, men and women, children, could go to get a bike, a free bike. But not only did they receive these bikes, but they also were instructed on how to repair and maintain their bikes. In the years since they received their grant from SDOP, they have branched out to advocacy work for increased public transportation, particularly in the south side of our city. Other SDOP projects throughout the United States include such projects as the Visible Community in Maine, where they have received 2 grants in the town of Lewiston, one to develop a residence-driven master plan for their downtown area, and another for the creation of a tenant advocacy organization. Vamos Unidos is a community-based group of low-income Latinx street food vendors in the Bronx. They organize for economic self-sufficiency and to build political consciousness with the help of SDOP. A project in the Dominican Republic was a well to bring water to one of the most impoverished communities, where now 80% of the people have potable water. You can see that as the president of SDOP committee, Reverend Karen Brown, says, SDOP grants go where the disenfranchised can be empowered, and all they have to do is show that they own the project. SDOP takes a grassroots vision and makes it a reality. This agency is also a beneficiary of 1 great hour of sharing, the special offering that we're taking during this month. Next is Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, which is also a beneficiary of 1 great hour of sharing, where it receives 32% of the funds, the same as SDOP. Presbyterian Disaster Assistance. It's difficult to know where to begin when talking about Presbyterian Disaster Assistance because they are everything, everywhere, all the time, borrowing from the title of a recent Academy Award-winning movie, which was terrible. My own personal opinion. Our Mission and Social Justice Committee just funded PDA last month for their work with partners in Turkey and Syria as a result of the 7.8 earthquake. Last year, they began working in Ukraine, providing drinking water, food, non-food supplies, and our church gave $1,500 to help on this ongoing effort. In 2022, PDA responded to 23 states dealing with active disasters, whether it was Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, or Cuba. When, need me to move over?
Nope.
Okay. When Hurricane Ian hit, Hurricane Fiona, and there were also disasters in Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. There was flooding in July in Kentucky, Mississippi, and Virginia, and they were there. Wildfires in Colorado, and they were there. But they were also everywhere internationally. PDA has found that it is often churches in other countries, as it is in ours, that offer the most effective and sustained effort in responding to human suffering. PDA working with overseas partners to respond to their requests for assistance as they reach out to their neighbors. In South Sudan, where 4 million people have been displaced because of violence, PDA not only assisted in improving healthcare, supplied needed food and water, but also help displaced persons secure their livelihoods. They are there to support peace initiatives with their partners on the ground. Another aspect of PDA's program is their refugee assistance program here in the United States. Their tagline, which you may have seen, I think on Westminster, in front of Westminster, "We choose welcome," has manifested in numerous ways. They are working in the areas of refugee resettlement, supporting local congregations and task forces with grants to assist in responding to emergency and new refugee situations. They assist in offering technical guidance to churches and mid-councils. They are there. I would encourage you to check out their website, as there are too many examples of where they have responded to help people who are poor. And as I mentioned before, Reverend Bob Barnes and his wife Kathy worked with PDA for many years as volunteers. So talk to them when they return to Santa Fe. PDA asks donors to help in 3 ways: give, act, and pray. And let's move on to Presbyterian Mission Agency. For more than 200 years, U.S. Presbyterians have responded to the call of Jesus Christ by proclaiming and living out our faith, laboring with love and energy to promote God's justice in the world. Presbyterian Mission Agency is the national ministry arm of the Presbyterian Church USA and the largest of the 6 General Assembly agencies. This agency is organized around 4 different ministry areas: compassion, peace, and justice, racial equality and women's intercultural ministries, theology, formation, and evangelism, and world mission. With over 200 mission co-workers in 50 countries and an estimated 94 million Christians today that claim the heritage of these Presbyterian efforts. I'm going to focus today on this area of world mission. We've been fortunate to have a number of mission co-workers visit our church and share their work with us. We've had Sarah Henkin from Colombia, someone Alice knows well. The international peacemaker, Reverend James Ninru from South Sudan. Also from South Sudan, Lisa Wagstaff. A husband and wife team from Ethiopia. Mark Adams and his wife, Miriam Maldonado, who served the Frontera de Cristo program where we get our Cafe Justo. And I know Jen and Perry had a young man from, and I'm trying to remember, was it Thailand? That visited with you?
It was even a tiny country.
It's Sri Lanka?
No.
I was trying to remember and I couldn't remember where he was from, but I remember him speaking. But we've had a variety of people come to visit us and to share their mission experiences. We've also had the good fortune to have Ann and Dick Rowe as members of our congregation, who have told of their work primarily in Pakistan, although they served in Cameroon and other African countries. Many of us probably grew up in a church that may have helped support the mission worker in some far-off country, thinking that all they did was evangelize. The mission co-workers of today still preach and evangelize, but they are also teachers, church planters, doctors, public health specialists, chaplains, human rights advocates, agriculturists, environmental activists, journalists, printers, and water and sanitation specialists, and I'm sure I've left out some of the other actual activities that they do. They teach theology, church history, Greek, Hebrew, and English. They organize mission teams, but most important, they accompany, they listen, they work in partnership. This is key to the modern co-worker who works in partnership with local people to help them grow spiritually and accomplish goals for their village, their families, and themselves. We're now going to see a 17-minute video which describes the work of mission co-workers in the Caribbean and Latin America. The three focus for their areas of mission are partnership relationships, education theology, and climate and economic justice. I'll note that one of the pieces that talks about the work of YAVs in Peru. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Young Adult Volunteer Program, you may remember that we have one of our congregation members, Drew Hill, Christina and Kurt's son, who is a YAV right now, serving with people with special needs in Washington, D.C.
Somos las compañeras y compañeros en misión y el personal de las regiones de Latinoamérica y el Caribe. We are the mission co-workers and staff of the Latin American and Caribbean region. Recognizing that we are interconnected across continents, we accompany partners as they reckon with climate change, dire poverty and hunger, conditions that destabilize economies, entrench corruption, and force migration. As our partners determine root causes of these conditions, we join them in seeking justice. As they preach and teach new generations, we pray and sing and study with them. As they nurture community leaders in difficult contexts, we come alongside them in the struggle and joy of seeing lives transformed by God. Before the Spanish and Portuguese arrived in the 16th century, the peoples of the vast lands and islands that stretch from the Rio Grande to the Tierra del Fuego knew themselves and the divine by many names. Though the conquerors imposed Roman Catholicism, religious beliefs and practices remained diverse. As nations gained independence in the 19th century, Protestantism became part of the religious mix. Presbyterians from the United States founded churches and educational institutions in Mexico, Guatemala, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, and Venezuela. Cubans who brought Presbyterianism to their island home from the United States were soon joined by U.S. missionaries. In recognition that our mission practices had been paternalistic, our church restructured our mission relationships in the decades after the Second World War. We also listened to the new theological steerings, giving voice to deep desires for justice throughout Latin America. Newly autonomous national churches, now our partners in mission, invited mission co-workers to collaborate with them under their leadership. Our church also sought new partner institutions in various countries with whom to serve in God's mission. Notions of partnership expanded as Presbyterians and congregations developed relationships in the region. Joining Hands networks have connected U.S. Presbyterians to new partner organizations to address the root causes of poverty. Through Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, our church has both responded to disasters and worked to decrease the vulnerability of communities in regions already experiencing the impacts of climate change. Presbyterians from the United States have also stood with human rights defenders and those displaced by war. Juntos y juntas, together with our partners, we seek to be faithful to the God of life. The Presbyterian Church USA's work in Latin America and the Caribbean currently touches on three broad themes: compañerismo y relaciones, educación y teología, y justicia climática y económica.
All mission co-workers in the PCUSA work in partnership, en compañerismo, at the invitation of international organizations and churches, and some mission co-workers focus specifically on facilitating healthy cross-cultural relationships. These mission co-workers work alongside North Americans, facilitating mutual dialogue with local partners. Trabajamos en pro de la justicia. We seek justice together as we come to terms with past and present behaviors and ideas that are obstacles to an abundant life for all.
Mission needs to be mutual. We're not there to fix it, but we're here to walk together and learn together.
They offer these spaces of education and discussion for people so that they can wrestle with the issues. The team I'm a part of, Intercultural Encounters, gets to invite North Americans into these conversations because the issues that Guatemalans face are often intertwined with the issues that we're dealing with as North Americans.
We provide opportunities for PCUSA congregations to work and serve with our partners, but also to be with them, offering a sacred space and experience to understand the struggles of poverty, injustice, and inequality they are facing. We are the bridge to creating stronger and more intentional partnerships.
The Presbyterian Church USA accompanies seminaries and churches in historical critical Bible theology and study. Our partners seek to empower women and men to claim their identity in Christ, and mission co-workers seek to amplify their voices. Some mission co-workers are seminary professors, and some are church-based educators. Together, we exchange knowledge, analyze our context, and work to transform our churches, communities, and society.
I am excited that the Reformed University works to transform the life of young people through education and thus contribute to the reduction of poverty among the population.
Here, daily life is infused with theological questions as communities confront structural violence and deep-seated inequities. And people here expect theology to be part of the answer. The major transformation I've seen is in the lives of women. Older women have been able to fulfill a lifelong dream of studying theology and becoming pastors. And it's wonderful to watch them move into those roles, often with much more theological education than the men around them.
I'm particularly motivated by the faith of Christians who understand the Bible as a living word that challenges them to face injustice, to live the gospel, to hope against hope.
So one great example of resilience and determination comes from Rosa Maria Takash. She was the beneficiary of the secular scholarship for Quechua women for 3 years. She came a long way to achieve what she wanted and happily graduated from high school in November 2019. The opportunity to access to education through this scholarship gave Maria the chance to serve her church more fully.
Our education partners are on the cutting edge of social justice issues, such as gender equity, climate change, and economic and social justice.
The Latin America and the Caribbean regions have a long history of nurturing thoughtful leaders through the Young Adult Volunteer Program. Currently, 2 of the mission co-workers in this region are YAV site coordinators.
Being back with the YAV program as a site coordinator here in Colombia has been such a blessing. The program's growing focus on anti-racism has helped me learn how to be more critical of my own actions and the systems that work around me. And I give thanks to God for the opportunity to be part of this work, which is another aspect of peacemaking and justice seeking.
While YAVs from the United States were not able to serve in person during the pandemic, mission co-worker Jenny Valles recruited local young adults from Lima, Peru, to serve in the program, an important step in recognizing people called into service within local context.
Latin America and the Caribbean is a region devastated by oppressive forces, climate change, multinational land grabbing, extractive industry, and food imports and exports that undercut local markets. These forces separate families and displace hundreds of thousands of people. Through solidarity, our partners welcome one another with God's love. They advocate for legislation, grow healthy food in communities, reduce use of harmful trash, and educate children to lead their nations toward healthy lives. A través de la solidaridad, nos recibimos unos a otras en el amor de Dios.
In the very places that the conquistadores arrived 500 years ago, people are still fighting for their right to have sovereignty over their own land and to have clean water, to breathe clean air, and to live in harmony with one another and with the land around them.
One thing I'm excited about what our partner SAPAD does in Nicaragua is they help people have a lot of land in the rural areas, and they help those people plant crops in a sustainable way where that helps them raise food. It increases their health by getting a diversity of food, and if they have extra food, they can sell it to their neighbors or give it to their neighbors.
Community organizing really helped to bring the community together. We have seen there's people that have been living in the community for 15 years. They know each other, but they haven't been able to come together to achieve things that really transform the community.
Students, administrators, and professors at the UVL are taking God's promise of a new heaven and a new renewed earth seriously.
These past 2 months, Mia, Jenny, and I have been visiting other community gardening groups in various neighborhoods. Learning from this network of gardeners is making it possible for us at the UBL to start our own community garden.
We are living into this vision, recognizing that we are part of creation, within it, not separate from it.
Our partner, Fundama, is a network of farmer organizations all the way across the little country of Haiti. And what they are doing is working in their own communities, sharing with one another. But what excites me is the way that they together look at the root causes of poverty in Haiti, the effects of climate change that we all know so well in Haiti with all of its disasters, the land grabbing, the food imports. These are tough topics. These are big issues. But the people of Fundama don't shy away from that hard work, even when it's difficult, even when it seems impossible.
I am thrilled to be working in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras because there's such a rich tradition of activism and martyrdom in the region, from activists like Berta Cáceres or Rigoberta Menchú, as well as martyrs like San Oscar Romero.
Migration is an issue that touches all people in this region.
Many Hondurans are in the process of seeking asylum in the United States because of dire economic need and threat of violence. And every person and every family in the church, every family in Honduras is touched by migration. We can't help but address it in our churches and our classes.
Just in the last 36 hours, 268 men, women, and children have come through these doors and been welcomed back into Mexico. They've been welcomed as beloved children of God after being expelled from the United States. This is a place of more than enough, where people from both sides of the border come together to welcome our sisters and brothers as beloved children of God.
Years ago, I heard one of the local pastors, Reverend Milton Mejia, share a reflection on the words of 2 Corinthians 4, 8-10. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed, always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be made visible in our bodies.
There is so much to love about the region where I work.
What I love about Borders is that brings community together to share culture and to share and cultivate relationships.
Guatemala is filled with beautiful things, and I'm not just talking about the land.
What I love about Peru is its diversity.
All this biodiversity.
There's so much diversity on it.
Like God's little laboratory.
I love watermelon.
The people and the clothing and the culture of hospitality.
The people of Haiti are extraordinary.
And I love living where I can eat watermelon all year round.
The rich history of the indigenous people.
How rich is our history, how strong and resilient is the people.
How strong and innovative and resilient they are.
You can be in the busy streets of Lima, on its beaches, or on the desert coast.
It's got everything.
But then you can also go inland to the peaceful rural areas, to the sounds of the jungle or the fresh air of the mountains.
The people themselves are diverse.
African culture mixed with Spanish culture and French culture and Dutch culture.
There's just immense cultural diversity here.
A mosaic of different things that make us, and all those things make us interesting and unique.
The people of Haiti yearn to be together with one another, to share something, to share a story, to share a laugh.
The expressions of God, understandings of God, the presence of God is so real and so illuminating.
I love to see that in addition to the church, there are many other groups that work for a dignified life in Colombia.
The faith of the people of Haiti is unlike any that I've ever seen. It's starting to feel like work.
Actually had the opportunity to meet the watermelon lady at the General Assembly. I had been corresponding with her, and a number of years ago, General Assembly was in Portland, Oregon, where our daughter lived, and her daughter happens to live there too. So she had an extra interest in coming to Portland, and we had corresponded previously about her work. She teaches at the seminary, and so it was fun to meet her face to face, and didn't talk about watermelon, but we did talk about a lot of other things that she's doing. Now we'll transition from Latin America and the Caribbean to Washington, D.C., where our Office of Public Witness is located. The Presbyterian Office of Public Witness is the public policy, information, and advocacy office of the General Assembly. Its task is to advocate and to help the church to advocate the social witness perspectives and policies of the Presbyterian General Assembly. The church has a long history of applying these biblically and theologically based insights to issues that affect the public, maintaining a public policy ministry in the nation's capital since 1946. The Office of Public Witness staff members visit national policymakers and their staff, write letters, make phone calls, and occasionally testify before Congress or facilitate the testimony of church leaders. This involvement helps to clarify the moral and ethical issues at stake in public policy. The goal is to make clear to people in government what the General Assembly is concerned about, why, and what can be done to respond to these concerns. The recent areas of concern that they have addressed are urging the U.S. government to change policy toward Cuba, focusing on nonviolent action in Ukraine, working to heal the broken asylum system, responding with our Jewish and Muslim brothers and sisters as they face anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, ecological and environmental concerns, criminal justice, healthcare, violence, just to name a few. It seems like they've covered pretty much about everything. The last program I want to talk about is the Presbyterian Hunger Program. When putting together this talk on PHP, I thought back to the early 80s when my husband and I first joined this church. We saw how the congregants, particularly those in contemporary worship, lived their faith in this community. I remember how the women of this church made sack lunches and fed people out the front door of the sanctuary. Those of you who knew Pat Brandenburg may remember that every 4th of July, she would set up her grill. Liz is smiling. Would set up her grill on the front steps of the church and grill hot dogs for anyone who was hungry. Jim Brown reminded me recently that there was a time when groceries were packed in the basement of our church before we remodeled. I remember this jar that one of these jars sat on each table, and for every church supper, it was called the 2 cents jar, and this is what it says. At each meal, as you pause to give thanks, give 2 cents for a world without hunger. The 2 cents a meal offering is an opportunity for each of the members of your household to participate equally in the disciplines of prayer and thanksgiving. And Jesus said to them, you give them something to eat. Mark 6:37. I keep everything. And now that we're moving, I'm regretting it. But that's another story. One summer, we hosted a hot water hospitality at our church, which included providing showers and a lunch for the homeless. It was primarily for men because the women were being taken care of at the interfaith shelter. More recently, Barb Hutchison and others loyally collected bags of non-perishable foods for Bienvenidos food pantry each month and delivered them. Although we don't collect food items anymore, we do give grants to Bienvenidos. We, as your Mission and Social Justice Committee, continue to look for ways to feed the hungry, whether it is through grants to the Food Depot, the Interfaith Shelter, St. Elizabeth, or Renewity Resources, which is what the community farm that John Stevenson ran has become. Many of you in this church also prepare meals on a regular basis for the Interfaith Shelter. Last week, I talked to Jane Hannon in California. She was the hunger coordinator for her synod in California from 1978 to 87. She talked about the training she received at Ghost Ranch, the travel seminar to 5 African countries, which were greatly suffering from drought in the 80s. She said something interesting. I can't think of a single subject that doesn't connect with food. After listening this first Sunday of this month to Amanda Brakel from Food Depot, I think we can all agree. Without readily available nutritious food to all people, children don't do well in school, workers may have trouble concentrating on their jobs or even be absent. There are more doctor and emergency room visits. Babies do not develop cognitively or physically as they should, just to name a few of the hunger-related effects. The PHP suggests 6 areas of hunger ministry where we as a congregation can be involved. The first is hunger alleviation, which is identified as providing food in a dignified way with an eye to long-term structural solutions. Although we at our church do many of the suggested ideas to alleviate hunger, one we might consider is to partner with another church to support their hunger ministry. Westminster Presbyterian on St. Francis is known by some of us as the little church with the big heart. Collaborating with them on a hunger project could be fulfilling, as we've already worked with them helping the Afghan family, the Ibrahimis. Westminster is the only church in New Mexico that was awarded by Presbyterian Hunger as a hunger action church, which meant they had to meet several criteria. The second area of hunger ministry is development assistance, which is described as addressing the root causes of hunger and poverty through equitable and sustainable development. I think our support for the community farm when it was run by John Stevenson for many years would be a good example of this. For now it's called Reunity, but when John owned the farm and was alive, he lived to 102 or something like that in the hundreds. Many of us worked on the farm and helped support it financially. Continuing to help Reunity Resources, which is the new program, they provide fresh vegetables and fruits to many nonprofits in Santa Fe and also have a farm table that they set up on the weekends just for anyone to buy food. The third area that PHP suggests is hunger education, learning about the systemic causes of hunger, including racial, gender, and economic injustice. We hope through this series on poverty that we've begun this journey and will continue it. The fourth area is lifestyle integrity, which is adopting a sustainable personal and corporate lifestyle to restore justice and project all of God's creation. We are proud of our Cafe Justo project from Chiapas, our olive oil from Palestine, fair trade projects, but we need more people to sell these projects on Sundays. Let me know after class if you're willing to do this. We've started a recycle program, again, here in our church with Reverend Black's help. You may have noticed the Earth Keepers 360 cans around the church, but we need to take personal responsibility also. How much food do we waste? Do we support local farmers at the farmers market? Do we recycle at home? I want to end this talk by quoting FDR. The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much. It is whether we provide enough for those who have too little. And I just wanted to thank CC once again, before I forget, for getting us through this and showing the video. I'd like you to think a minute. When I have done a little research on this, I knew some of this, but when I've done a little research, it just made me so proud to be a Presbyterian. And I grew up Methodist, and there's nothing wrong with Methodist, but it was really enlightening to me and exciting to see the different programs that the National Church offers, with many, many resources for all of us to use. So I'd like you to share with the group what, after listening to this, or just what makes you proud to be a member of this church, to be a Presbyterian. And anyone online, you're certainly welcome to chime in also.
Well, I'm always proud when somebody asks where I go to church, and there's just an immediate response of, oh, that's a wonderful church. You've done so much. And that goes back many, many decades.
Melissa and Mitchell mentioned in our Mission to Social Justice meeting on Thursday that we were talking about the not drive-by, what did we call them? Pop-ups, thank you. The pop-up programs that the stewardship committee did the last year for several different causes. And she said one of the things that she noticed was that people, not only just people in the community, tourists that walked by, were willing to donate to certain causes. And she said certain people ended up coming to our church wanting to know more because they were seeing that we were involved in helping the local community.
I think the way the venue is used for community purpose, the music programs that are open to the community, it seems to me that so often when we speak with someone whom we know not connected to the church, they've been within the sanctuary where they've had some really positive connection to this church because of music programs and the generosity of the venue.
Thank you. Jean's our treasurer, so she knows all about the money.
Talking about music.
Well,
we're talking about money.
You know about money. Money, we need music, but we need money. Ellen, I think Ellen is on. I see a hand up.
Yeah, Ellen
Armbruster.
Ellen?
Unmute, Ellen. Ellen, would you unmute? There.
Hi. Actually, I didn't intentionally have my hand up. Is it up? Sorry about that. I can try to. It's not up here. So anyway, I apologize. I will say it's been a wonderful class, a wonderful program today. I've really enjoyed it, and I agree. There's just amazing things that are going on out there. So thank you so much for providing that, Judy.
Thank you, Ellen, for listening in. I know your teaching schedule is busy at the university, but thank you for joining us.
Just a few hours here as well. And our church is known nationally for three things at least. One is Andrew's work with environmental justice and on-the-page communities in Earthquake 360. Another one took place even last Monday here in the preschool, where the top 4 people in the administration, Biden administration, along with the Undersecretary of Early Childhood Education, visited the preschool. We were selected out of all the preschools in New Mexico then to come and visit this preschool to see the innovative activities and teachings that they're doing that New Mexico is being known for. We're one of the leaders in innovation in early childhood education, so we may get that word out. The third is the Guns and Gardens that started here with our New Mexican Gun Violence group, and then came from this church to the Presbyterian to the General Assembly for the Guns and Garden program that was approved last June. So there are Guns and Gardens events all across the country in churches and nonprofits. So we should be looking at not only just a little church in a triangle here in Santa Fe, but how it's spread to the rest of the country.
I think when it comes right down to it, though, Judy, it's every single person in this church needs to be doing their part. And so it is when we started to provide a meal a month at the shelter, it was, we thought, well, we'll just do it this one. Actually, it was Bruce Black that suggested it to us. And the first time we did it, all of us enjoyed it. It was a very rewarding time for us, and we've continued that. It is amazing, though, that in the past we did a full week of dinners at the shelter. Now we're hoping this year to add one more evening. But that takes commitment by those in our church to do that, whether or not it's writing a check or whether or not it is spending the time to do that. It is a continuation. I think we are all commanded and directed by God to give back. And so it's important that we do that. I think there's a lot of people that do a lot, or there's a few people that do a lot. There needs to be more people that do a lot. It is, or at least to do something. It is, it's what we're meant to do.
I've been really excited because we've had 6 new members to our Mission and Social Justice Committee that Goslin, who are here, Arthur and Jeanne and George and Elise Packard. So we continue to roll along, and it's really exciting. It's a big responsibility for all of us to discern the best ways that we use the congregation's donations toward mission locally, internationally, and regionally. But it's been exciting to get new voices on our committee, and certainly you've had new people too on deacons.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's the way that we actually, when you talk with someone and you tell them that you go to church, then it becomes much more than words. When somebody asks you, why do you go to church? I mean, in my opinion, if church is anything, it has to be a witness. And if you don't do anything but just come to church, that's not a witness.
I've been really pleased and now saddened, of course, but while I was taking Ethel Trimmer as second family, while I would be taking her swimming twice a week, people in the women's changing room would say, oh, is she your mother? Is she, your grandmother? And I'd say, no, it's a part of a program we have at First Presbyterian called Second Family that takes care of people who don't have family living in the Santa Fe area and need their help. And of course, now I don't have my swimming partner in. But people were always, oh, you're doing that? That sounds like a really great idea. So I think getting the word out about all the wonderful things we're doing locally, which is what we're going to be talking about next week. We're going to be taking all the information that we have gained for these last 3 weeks and talking more specifically about what our church can do.
Okay, I have a comment to make that may not be that pleasant for people hearing. I want to ask a question. How many people in the audience served in Vietnam? Okay.
Not directly. I worked in a refugee camp for Vietnamese refugees.
Okay. So I grew up in a farming community called Lyman, Colorado, in eastern Colorado. And so I understand what it's like to be a farmer. Now, all a farmer wants to do is be left alone so they can do their farming. Okay, in Vietnam, Vietnamese farmers didn't like either the Viet Cong or the US. Okay. So what happened was the reason they gave allegiance to the US was that the US did not take from them. The Viet Cong, on the other hand, took the rice and everything they grew and gave to them. So from their standpoint, the only thing they saw was the Americans more or less let them alone, the Viet Cong took. One of the problems I had with what call the U.S. foreign policy, but I think it also gets here. There's some place in the Bible that says, if you give a person a fish, they'll eat for one day. If you teach them how to fish, they could live forever. So we're very good at giving food, but there's nobody teaching the people how to grow their food. Now, I understand that Africa is fairly dry, but also saw some, I don't know, either in this, where there was a gentleman whose mission was to dig wells and put windmills there to draw water, because there is water. Now, you may have to go a long ways down to get it, but you can get it. But we don't have, we give food and stuff like that, but except for the few missionaries who go down there, you know, we don't teach people how to grow food. Now, the Peace Corps, you know, was a little different. You know, they went down there and they taught people how to do this. And they had, as we in the military said, they had feet on the ground. And so I'll be the first one to admit that at my age, I have had zero interest in becoming a missionary. Okay. But also, no, I watched this video and the people are having problems growing stuff because the gorillas are coming. And I pronounce it like gorillas, like it's an animal.
Yeah.
Instead of gorillas, like they're fighters. And so they take. The only way you can stop those people is to be enforced. But we don't. And I am not willing to put troops there to protect it. But that's a reality of how. So if you can't grow, then you need to give. But it just, poverty is an evil thing. You know, it's kind of like trying to get out of debt. If you're really in debt, it's a long term and you have to learn how to do that. But if you're under duress, it's hard to do that. If you ever look down a gun barrel that's aimed at you with the sole intent of killing you, you have a totally different philosophy than if you're left alone. And I don't have the answer to that. But it's reality. I know that a lot of the foodstuffs that U.S. gives to Africa, for example, never get to the people who want. They give it to the people in power. And those people in power are supported by the military. And, you know, that's just reality of that. As I say, I don't have the answer. If I did, I don't know, I won't say they'd crown me as king, but they wouldn't damn me for reading that. So I just want somebody to understand what it's like to be a farmer who wants to be left alone to grow food for his family and whoever else, and under tremendous duress by military. And you see that in almost every country in South America, almost every country in Africa. And so I'm not saying don't do what you have been doing. But it's not the solution. I don't think it's the solution that Jesus talked about in the Bible. And as our congregation gets older, it's much more difficult, you know, to go and do that. As I say, at my age, I had zero interest.
I just
So I'll
was-
shut up and quit preaching.
Jan,
Just one quick thing, just to follow up on that. I do think that there is a lot more in the programs that I see that are addressing some of that sustainability, as they call it, or empowerment, where it's not just giving a fish, not just giving, something. It's that teaching moment. So I am happy to see more of that.
I'd like to comment that the loans to women in Africa have proven extremely successful in them starting to take care of themselves instead of giving anything to the men, because we've seen what they do. Is worked very well, and they're getting paid back almost every penny they put in. And that seems like a very sustainable way.
Dick is talking about microloans that have worked really successfully, I think. Alice, you had your hand up?
Well, when I was growing up, the role of missionaries in the world was, we have all the answers and we're here to take care of you. And one of the things that has impressed me through my life is how our philosophy has changed so much. And we're there to help. We ask what they need in the community. And that's very impressive to me.
Yeah.
I'm on the board with a nonprofit that David Douglas runs, a family-owned nonprofit. And it's called Watersheds. And the intent of it is to fund Christian foresters to do reforestation projects. And so I've been on a lot of Zooms with people all over the world. And one of the Presbyterian ministers or missionaries, Jim McGill, has developed different mango strains, and they're teaching the seminarians to do the agriculture aspect so that when they go to a church, wherever they're planted in these little small villages, they can start community gardens, mango orchards, and he goes around and visits, and they seem to be protected somewhat because they are not in someone's field, but they're by a church, and so anyone that would chop them down or take their fruit or vegetables, it seems to be a good win-win situation.
Yeah, like Alice said, you know, our foreign policy for a long time, the American philosophy, I'll say, is, okay, we're gonna come over and we're gonna help, we're gonna do this for you, rather than to teach you how to survive. And so what I see happening now in migration is a lot of people from Colombia, South America, trying to get to the US so they can control their destiny. And what do? We build a wall. And so it's mind-boggling to me. But, I have a very good friend back in, I haven't seen her in a long time, but she had an impact in Africa. She taught women how to make these beads. I don't know what I'm going to say paper, but I know that's not true. And so these women were able to make these, sell them, and become, I won't say necessarily self-sufficient, but they didn't have to rely on a male to take care of them. And I've always said that the world won't change until the women decide we are going to change it. And so, again, I'll shut up.
That's why Dale married you. It looks like maybe Pam Najowski has a quick comment. I know we're at our time limit, but Pam, do you have something you wanted to add? No, I see this hand up on there, but.
Yeah, I just, yeah, I'm sort of echoing the first person who spoke and said that when people ask what church do you go to, you get a lot of positive support about that. And that's, if our church did not do this, I would not be interested in the First Presbyterian Church. So it makes all the difference to me, all the activities that we try to engage in. Your leadership, Judy, is just very, very remarkable, along with a lot of other dedicated hard workers too. And I really, really appreciate it. So thank you for what you're doing specifically.
Can I say one thing?
Yes, Jen.
I think on a national level, it's really important to remember that now queer folk can marry each other. And that's been a big change. And as somebody who works out in the community with a lot of queer folk as well, and they find out I'm in a church, and then I kind of try to work it in somehow or another that we marry gays and lesbians can get married in the Presbyterian Church. And so Harry married our director of rehab, which was really exciting. And then everybody came and everybody saw Harry and they knew he was my husband, knew he was in a mainline church. And so that was, I think that development for millennials, really, really important, not only for everybody, obviously, but in terms of how they might look at the church and darken our threshold, knowing that we're accepting and empowering.
That's a really important aspect, I think.
Sorry to go over, but just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, folks, for coming.
Thank you.